What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, wherever you are and whatever time it is. Welcome back to another video in a brand new series with your man Measureholic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my Britanni campaign for Total War Attila using the Age of Justinian 555 AD mod. That's right, we are playing as the Britanni. The Britanni are the final holdout, the final remnants of Roman authority and occupation in Britain at this stage. We are entirely on our own here. There are no other Romans near us. And we share the same faction traits as the Romans. We will have better relations with immigrants coming to our country, and we'll also be able to levy our units from hordes passing through. But ladies and gentlemen, playing on normal difficulty, let's get into this brand new campaign. And here we are on the campaign map. We can see that we basically hold Wales and southwestern England. We have our capital Kerry, and up here in the northwest we have Segient. I'm sure I'm butchering those pronunciations. Feel free to correct me down below, but I don't specialize in Britain or Britanni, I should say, naming and whatnot. I'm pretty useless with that. But anyway, we have a very old king, Lucius, up here in the north, King Lucius Artorius. I'm going to be renaming his army to the First Legion to try and revive the Roman spirit amongst our people. Although we aren't really Romans anymore, we're basically Britons with a mixture of Celtic and Roman culture. We're still going to be trying to stay faithful and loyal to the Roman Empire at this time, which is still alive way down to the south. But here at the diplomacy screen, you can see we're surrounded by enemies. People who don't like us, although we are not at war with anybody yet. The one nation who is friendly with us doesn't even take agreements from us, and I'm not going to waste money on them, so screw that. And looking at our family tree, Lucius has a son who is 28 years old and is unmarried. This is very, very bad. I was hoping he would have already had an heir, but he hasn't, so we're going to work on that immediately. We need to secure our line to the throne. King Lucius is already very, very old, and he's done a very good job at keeping our people alive through this very troubling time. However, he's not going to last too much longer, so we need to make sure that our heir and line of succession is secure. But my first act is going to be moving the First Legion down to the southeast. Towards London, which is currently occupied by the Germanic Saxons that have come in and invaded our shores from the east. While that's happening, though, I'm trying to organize a garrison army for our northern settlement. I'm very worried about the Irish coming down and trying to raid our lands. If not them, then perhaps the other Germans to the northeast, or the Celts who are holding up in Scotland to the north. I'm not really too sure on what's going to happen with this campaign. I haven't done any testing whatsoever. I'm just jumping straight into it, which is why we're not screwing around with this episode. We're getting right into it. Thankfully, our son Gaius Constantinus. Oh gosh, I destroyed that. Anyway, Gaius is getting a wife. However, she's very stuck up. But what kind of good Roman is not stuck up to some degree anyway, so that's okay. But hopefully they can get busy and secure our line of succession very quickly. Although this is a 12 turns per year mod, so we don't necessarily have to rush too quickly, but I do need to be careful with our King Lucius. He's very fragile at this point in time. He's over 70 years old actually. But while the First Legion is marching south to Kerry, our capital, I'm trying to recruit mercenary Celts on our way, and I'll also be replacing our very basic spear levy units with some swordsman units that are a little bit more well trained. Their armor is still pretty bad, but for the most part they're going to be our basic battle frontline infantry. We still have equites, which are very Roman, but beyond that our roster is very Celtic, or Britannic I should say, in composition at this moment. So we have a very Dark Age style military. And it's going to be like that for a while. But anyway, here I am checking out the diplomacy of the Saxons, or the Saxons who have come in from the east. They currently control London, which one of the major cities in England and in all of Brittany. If we can take over this, it will really help us get a decent financial and strategical situation going. However, they have a very large garrison force at their city, which includes their king. So this is going to be a really interesting battle to begin us off. I wait out a few months before I end up assaulting the city, but I was getting a little bit worried about what was going to happen. I didn't know if they had other armies in the region, so I said, screw it, let's do this here and now. King Lucius is now leading the assault on London, which, ladies and gentlemen, we're not screwing around, we're jumping right into this. Let's do it. And here we are at Londonwich, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoy the graphic settings. We're attacking apparently in the afternoon. The sun is giving us a very beautiful composition of shadows and lighting. I hope you guys enjoy the look of it. If you find it a little bit too dark or too light, please do let me know down below. This is Total War Attila, not Total War Rome 2, keep in mind, so I'm still trying to get my settings correct to give you guys the best visual experience possible. But anyway, this is going to be a really hard settlement if the enemy plays it right. They have a lot of hills, a lot of choke points that they can use to stop us from getting to the top where their victory point is. This could be a very bloody siege indeed. We're going to look over my army though. It's very dark age in composition, like I said before. We have some very basic peasants who are my archer contingent with my catapults there. At the front, I have some guerrilla-style skirmishers who are able to deploy way ahead of our army, so they're going to be nice and close to deal the enemy some damage as they man the walls. I have a lot of siege equipment in the rear here. You can see as I've had quite a few months of sieging the settlement now. I have some a little bit more well-trained spearmen on the right flank, but then in the center here are my basic peasant levy spearmen. They come basically from the houses to the battlefield. They bring a shield that's probably being passed down from their grandfather, and they have a basic spear that they use to, I don't know, push sheep around or something, I don't know. But they're very basic, and they're going to be just basically numbers in the battlefield for me. Although, over here on the left flank, we have some Celtic proper units that are going to be charging into battle with their axes, and so they'll be my shock infantry. And then in the rear, we have our, what they call civi units, or C-I-V-I. However you want to say that. These are swordsmen. These are going to be our basic battle frontline swordsmen. They're going to be very good at killing the enemy. However, they will suffer when they go up against units like axemen, or if they get charged by cavalry, especially if it's shock cavalry. So I've got to be careful with them. But for the most part, they will make up the majority of our legions as we begin reforming the Roman society up here in Britain. And there's, of course, King Lucius at the rear, leading, despite being 70-something years old. I think he's 71 or 72. Insane to be able to stand up in that armor, but he is able to. And his personal bodyguard is really, really cool, actually. Very well armored, and not a bad unit at all. He's even going to get involved in the fighting here soon. Then on the left-hand flank, I have some mercenary cavalry, just in case the enemy tried to rush us. But they didn't. And instead, they're going to take a bombardment from my skirmishers and my catapults. However, the thing about the Age of Justinian mod is that it actually restricts the siege equipment that you get in this. I mean specifically for catapults. So my catapults, instead of being 4 in total, were actually only 2. And they have very little ammunition, so I'm trying to focus on hitting damaged parts of the enemy's wall. I managed to destroy their gate and a couple of sections of the left-hand wall, so that is going to help us out quite a bit. But then I ran out of ammunition, so we're not able to kill too many of the enemy. But then I move forward with my siege towers and my swordsmen and my axemen across the entire line. It's very epic march forward here. I love getting these close-up little views of men and siege equipment and whatnot. But in the meantime, my axemen are charging into the fray first. They are coming in to shock through the enemy lines, punch through them, and while they're charging into the enemy defensive units, I'm going to be trying to outflank them with my spear and sword units through the gaps on the right-hand side. Unfortunately, though, the enemy is going to countercharge my troops, so we're going to take some casualties for sure. But thankfully, the enemy doesn't have any skirmishers that are constantly bombarding my melee troops, so that will help us to lessen the amount of casualties that we take. It's a beautiful cinematic shot of my men coming up the siege towers here. Even though we are kind of just an army of peasants for the most part, we still have some decent training among some of our troops, and they're going to only get better over time. So I'm really hoping that you guys enjoy the close-ups of these units. They're done very, very well. They're probably quite historically accurate. I don't know for sure. But the amount of variety in the units alone is quite astounding, to be honest. It's very, very good. I'm quite impressed for sure. On the right-hand flank, I'm trying to reinforce my troops by having my men come up over the siege towers. It was a little wonky at first. I had to give them repeated commands, but in the end, we ended up overwhelming the enemy troops at the main gate, and we are now outflanking them and surrounding and destroying them. However, I'm sending my cavalry very quickly because I noticed that on the left-hand side, the enemy is sending reinforcements down to help their men at the wall. And cavalry, even in the age of Justinian mod, is very powerful, just like in vanilla Attila. And these basic skirmisher melee cavalry units I have will actually do very well on the charge and in melee against the enemy swordsmen and skirmishers. So I'm hoping I can basically lock them down while I annihilate the garrison that's holding the main gate here. And they do that quite well for the most part, although I did send in some infantry support. Getting a little bit of a close-up here of the carnage left from the fight at the main wall here. The enemy has retreated or been destroyed at this point, and we are now starting to push along the left-hand side. We're stuck inside a narrow choke point, but my men are better, and we have cavalry support, and I'm pretty confident we'll win that fight eventually. It is a bit of a grind though. And on the right-hand flank here, the enemy king actually charged down and engaged my swordsman, but thankfully he left me a little gap here on the right. And you're going to see me get some very nice flanking charges. It is just with a levy spear unit who are very basic, but I will send some more spearmen and swordsmen around to help out. And we're actually going to end up hopefully killing the enemy king if he doesn't receive any reinforcements. And here is my swordsman unit coming down to rear charge the king from behind. He's almost entirely on his own at this point. The supporting units that were with the king and charged down into my troops routed by this point, and so the enemy king is going to die in the fighting here. We actually did really good to isolate him. He was feeling a little bit too brave and came in charging into us just like the barbarian he is, and he's going to suffer for it. On the left hand flank, I'm kind of just flying through time here because I'm trying to finish off the siege now. It seems like we're almost certainly going to win. However, the captain of the garrison is still here, and he is trying to do a little bit of a last stand here at the top where he has his little miniature stone hedge. But that's okay. I'll just surround his units and we'll annihilate him. I even get King Lucius involved in the fighting here with his personal bodyguard. A very excellent unit that he's fielding, very heavily armored, and enjoy the close-ups, ladies and gentlemen. I'm super excited to bring you guys a new mod, a new game to the channel, even though it still is Total War. I hope you guys do appreciate and enjoy the campaign. We get a very nice juicy cavalry charge, and that's going to shatter the enemy troops. They're basically done at this point. And with that charge, they rout. And with that, we get London Witch under our control. Okay, here are the statistics if you'd like to see them. We did end up taking quite a few casualties. Over 600 of our men died. And that was a lot of our swordsmen and mercenary axemen, so that's not very good. We took that many casualties, but it's expected considering we were assaulting a major city and they had a lot of troops. So at the end of the day, we did pretty well. And most of my men actually did very well in their killing and fighting. I was quite surprised how efficient my spearmen were as well at killing the enemy, even though they were just basic levies. But with that, we now have a proper foothold in England and in, the east side of Britain. Now, however, we do have a major enemy in the Anglia to the north here. They own Ep.1 in the far north, which is basically Northumberland, which is a major city, and then they have some smaller eastern settlements here. I know that they have a massive army in Ep.1 because I did some scouting earlier, and so I'm thinking since it's winter time, I'm going to try and spend a few turns that I have free away from their main army to try and rush their smaller villages that are bordering us. I know this is a little cheesy trying to rush the enemy in Total War. It's generally the smartest thing to do. However, to survive, I feel like this is kind of what we have to do. I only have enough money for one proper army, and even then our proper army is not as good as theirs for the most part. So I am going to try ahead and rush them. I tried to get some allies, especially in the Alt-Clut faction up here in the north. They were at war with the Angli, but unfortunately they just didn't want to have our support in their war, and so it doesn't matter. We're going to assault the enemy fishing village here to the east of Londonwich, and let's do it. And here we are at the settlement. It is a pretty cute little fishing village. They do have quite a few land formations around them. Our army is basically the same composition as before, although we do have some more mercenary units in axemen and skirmishers, so hopefully they'll help protect our more basic footmen or swordsmen who are our battle line troops. I do try to protect them a bit though, since they are a little bit more valuable than just some mercenaries that I can throw away and then replace a turn later. On the left hand flank though, we have our archers and levy spearmen kind of isolated, and you're going to see me pay for that here, and that the enemy actually charges out and targets my left hand flank, which is definitely my weaker flank. I'm going to be trying to rotate some some swordsmen and axemen to support them. However, it's going to take a while to do that, and the enemy's just moving super fast. My catapults are bombarding the city at this point, but they're not really going to get all that many kills since the enemy is pushing out and they're spreading out as they do so. And the enemy also gets a downhill charge against my spearmen here on the left flank, who are protecting my archers. The archers will do okay though, but I'll have to take them off the fire arrows, since fire arrows are not all that good at killing the enemy. Get a beautiful charge across our front line. The enemy gets a very nice charge indeed. They're probably going to kill quite a few of my men on the charge, although we were in a shield wall formation, despite my spearmen being basically levies. They do have the shield wall ability, so that's helpful. But as my troops started to take damage, I reinforced them with swordsmen across the front. I even had Lucius come in to give the men some word of encouragement. But the Germans are really holding out strongly against us at this point. Thankfully on the right hand flank, my axemen just decimated the enemy spearmen, and they also have some swordsmen who are going to push into the town itself and try and flank the enemy from behind. I also have my catapults trying to target their more specialized swordsman units and their general, who are now coming out of the town to fully get engaged in the fight. And across the board, my swordsmen are engaging the enemy on the left hand flank, and I've just given the order for Lucius to get involved in the fighting himself as well with his personal bodyguard. This is getting a little bit more desperate than what I expected. The garrison was decent, but I didn't think it would be this decent, and nor this smart. They actually charged out, and they charged against my weaker flank. However, once I sent reinforcements to the area, and I had some flaming shot from my catapults get involved, they actually started to rout. Not across the entire front, but a couple of the select units on our left-hand flank routed. And so that's going to give me a lot of room to breathe and allow me to outflank the enemy very nicely across the board here. The game here is a little bit dark, so apologies for that. I will be adjusting the camera brightness for future videos, but it's going to take me a little bit of time to get everything perfect. But I still hope you guys enjoy the visuals in the meantime. Attila is certainly a beautiful game, especially when you throw some mods in the mix. And the cavalry charge was very nice. Even though it was from some weak cavalry units, we managed to do quite a bit of damage against the enemy naval units that had landed on our right-hand flank and are storming the beaches towards my catapults. Thankfully, the enemy captain here was on his own, and so because he was, I sent reinforcements to help my cavalry on the right-hand flank. But at this point, the battle is pretty much sealed in our favor. At this point, there's nothing they can do to win, and they realize it, and then they start to rout across the entire front, and we win. We take over the settlement. Here are the statistics if you'd like to see them. You can see my axeman actually ended up getting annihilated in the end. The enemy general did very well against us, and his reinforcing swordsman did a very good number on my axemen after they had been outflanked. So that's a little unfortunate, but they are just mercenary units, so they can be replaced relatively easily. So it's not the end of the world. But anyway, we get another settlement under our control. It's definitely not a major settlement by any stretch, but I'll take anything I can get at this point. We really need control of our eastern shores at this point, because more Germanic factions and the more Viking-style Scandinavians will be coming in very soon. And if they haven't already, which we'll actually be seeing in a future episode, they will come here a lot faster than what we expected. So the 1st Legion will continue its very fast march against the enemy, and instead of sitting around and recruiting units for a long period of time, we'll be marching on this small little settlement to the north here. I'm just going to show you guys a couple close-ups of the battle here. It was very basic. They had a very small garrison, and it was a pretty visually appealing fight, but that's kind of it. We didn't really end up losing too many men, and it was just fun to see. So I thought I'd show you guys a couple close-ups before we continue the campaign. You can see my cavalry being absolutely lethal, despite them being very lightly armored. They're not shock cavalry by any stretch of the imagination, but they're still very, very effective. Like I said, Total War Attila has great cavalry charges, and Age of Justinian definitely plays into that as well. But we take the settlement of Lindo-Kalina? We'll call it Lindo. Lindo is under our control now. I occupied it. I debated liberating it, since I know that there's a large army at Ep.1 to the north. However, I wanted to solidify Britain. It needs to be under Roman control. Rome will rise again, but at this point, it's going to be a very big struggle. Despite us having a very good start to the campaign, we currently control all of these settlements down here in the southwest. We control Wales, southwestern England. We now control central and eastern England. However, in the north up here, we're going to be struggling to take Ep.1, especially with the winter snow. It's going to stop our blitzkrieg, and we're going to have to wait for the enemy to react. How they're going to react, though, I got no idea, but we'll find out next time. So thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one.